current structure of local government is no longer fit for purpose, and I think that is widely accepted across the political spectrum and indeed across New Zealand communities.
Regional councils, the top tier of local government in New Zealand, are being axed under radical reforms confirmed just an hour ago. Regional councils will be replaced by panels consisting of local mayors. For example, the mayors of Napier, Hastings, Wairoa and Central Hawke's Bay would take over running their regional council. The number of people on these panels will depend on the size and population of the region.
Simpler, more cost-effective local government was the headline on the Beehive media release.
Today we are announcing our proposal to replace regional councillors and force local authorities to develop plans to run their regions more efficiently and effectively. The status quo is not an option.
That release didn't mention the word amalgamation once, but that's effectively what it will end up being.
There is a case for local government reorganisation, for doing things more efficiently, but there's a real risk that this could end up being amalgamation by stealth.
I'm Alexia Russell, and today on The Detail, what is the plan for regional councils? Why are their newly elected representatives looking at losing their jobs? And why is Chris Bishop announcing this? He's not the local government minister.
I don't know why he's in charge of this, other than he's just really, really interested in it. And he always gets himself involved in local government issues here.
But Simon Watts is the local government minister, right?
Yeah, they sat there together, but it was in Chris Bishop's office that they made this announcement.
This is Stuff political reporter Glenn McConnell. Let's dive into what's been described as the biggest reorganisation of local government since 1989.
It is a huge announcement because it's effectively, this is a key part of New Zealand's democracy, regional councils, local government being completely overhauled, reformed so that regional councils, probably the next time a regional local government election comes up, you won't be voting for who is on your regional council. And the government now talking about getting rid of those elected positions on regional councils.
These councillors, they've only been sworn into office just 6 weeks ago. But when Chris Bishop was asked today if they would be able to serve out their entire 3-year term, he said that he could not give that guarantee. Now, when he was challenged on that in terms of fairness, in terms of democracy, given voters put them in office for 3 years, he said voters also elected this government to make the tough decisions in order to get the economy going again.
Chris Bishop raised, I think, actually a pretty good point. He said, who actually knows who they're voting for on a regional council? Who can name the councillors? Everyone does know who their mayor is, right? Or most people do. You're far more likely to know your mayor than the regional council representatives because, let's face it, we just voted, right? And you get sent these voting forms and you have to select a lot of different people. And this is, I guess, a fault of journalism too in the current media landscape. We don't have as much coverage of local government that we once did, so it isn't easy. Is this democratic process actually working that well when we have voter turnout of below 50%? Is that even currently a democracy if most people aren't participating in it? So that is the argument the government's using to say any fear about the democratic process being overridden here is not well founded. On the other end, in ECAN, in Canterbury, there is a case here. Dion, the chairman there, told me that actually ECAN has a reputation where people are quite well engaged and they do know what is happening. And so maybe that's a good example of this new system that we're going to need, everyone is going to need to think about, could have, depending on engagement in the areas and the concerns raised, different voting systems.
Decisions will be made through a population-based voting system. The boards could develop regional reorganisation plans within 2 years of being set up. Now, they could include shared services, merging territorial authorities and reallocating functions. But any plans would have to align with national priorities. And there will be no vote to approve those plans. The Minister for Local Government will have final sign-off on the plans.
Why do it in such a complex way that they're sort of putting an interim step in there before they effectively amalgamate? Is that right?
Yeah, effective amalgamation probably is fair to say. The government hasn't come out and said, we want to amalgamate all these councils. We want to merge councils, regional and district councils across the country. And on the issue of it being complex, well, there's sort of no other way to do it. Our local government system in New Zealand is really, really complex. If we go to Auckland, we have the super city, this council that required a royal commission and its own legislation to form. There is no regional council there, so they're not affected. And then across different areas of New Zealand, you have regional councils, you have local boards, you have city councils, district councils. In a place like Marlborough, you just have, similar to Auckland, one council. And so how do you clean up that system? How do you simplify it? Well, it's a pretty complicated job. It has to be done region by region. And I guess that is why the government has said, step one, we want to have panels of mayors coming in, and then they can start working out what happens in their own communities.
So there's been a bit of outcry, a bit of objection already. But if you're looking at the situation from, if you're in Marlborough or if you're in Auckland, one might say, well, what's all the fuss? It makes sense.
Yeah. And I am from Marlborough too. It is a simple system. You go down there, you know who to complain to, the mayor or whoever you voted for as your councillor. I also, live in Wellington, and it is, to be honest, quite complicated. I've talked to city councillors from Wellington City Council, and people are always complaining to them, saying, my buses are running late. Why is this happening? Well, they can't control it because that's actually controlled by the Greater Wellington Regional Council, a separate entity. They have nothing to do with it, or, they can talk to them, but they're not in charge of it, and they control that. And so it is actually quite complicated for voters and even people. I'm a political reporter. I care about politics, and I find it pretty complicated what's going on.
Talking about Wellington, though, they have really about 4 local councils in their area and the Greater Council. Should they not be looking at a massive amalgamation all in one stage?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and it's a question I asked to Chris Bishop last year, actually. I when I moved to Wellington, and I realised how many councils, how many mayors there were. If you want to write a story about Wellington's local government, you have to call up like 5 mayors. You've got Upper Hutt, Lower Hutt, Porirua, Kapiti, Greater Wellington, Wellington City. You have a few local boards in there as well. And Chris Bishop, he has been watching this for quite some time. He has been discussing, the idea of maybe amalgamating these councils, but it's so hard. People don't want to lose their jobs. People don't want to cede some power, cede some control to their neighbours or, somewhat distant neighbours across from Lower and Upper Hutt. There is still a lot of interest when it gets into your own neighbourhood about having a say over your own neighbourhood. And that's the thing with amalgamation, is that it would mean that your elected officials also have to consider, well, what's happening over in Carterton? What's happening in Wellington City? And how do we divvy up resources fairly across that entire space?
But isn't that a good thing? It'll stop this kind of replication, won't it? And then they can do bigger and better things in the region because the funding's coming from everywhere.
Yeah, and obviously people interact, don't they? The Wellington City Council in charge of the Botanic Gardens, awesome place that people from across the region come to visit. I was talking to the operator of East by West Ferries, the public transport ferries in Wellington, and he has a tricky job because he has to deal with Lower Hutt City Council, which is in charge of the wharves, and there's some debate about if they should replace Petone Wharf. That is currently broken and means that their ferries can't operate there. He also has to deal with Greater Wellington Regional Council about who fund public transport in Wellington. And so he's dealing with 3 councils. And look, he said it's okay. They've made a way forward. They know how to manage it. But look, of course he'd say that if he relies on these organisations and their goodwill. And that is a lot of, I hate to say it, bureaucracy, because that's what Chris Bishop said earlier, but there are a lot of people involved, and of course central government as well.
Interesting, central government, because didn't Chris Luxon say at the beginning of his term that they were all into, he campaigned on being localist, giving local boards a better say in what happens in the area, that kind of thing.
Yes, he did. Localism was a key campaign promise from the National Party. It is the reason they rallied against Three Waters, saying that the Labour government, was taking power out of the hands of locals about how they managed their own water infrastructure.
It's fundamentally the creation of these four mega sort of bureaucratic entities that are actually stripping power away from local communities and stripping those assets.
in a way, this does the same. Yes, it's not going to central government or central government-run organisations, but these are much larger organisations than district councils and regional councils potentially, if that amalgamation does go ahead. Well, Christopher Luxon didn't say much, that could have given a hint that this policy was coming up. It didn't really come as a surprise. As I said, Chris Bishop is very interested in this and has been open about his desire to reform how local government operates in New Zealand. And Shane Jones from New Zealand First effectively announced this policy a while ago at an event hosted by The Post, where he said they wanted to get rid of regional councils.
New Zealand First conference coming up, Remit, where we are going to seek the support of our party members and then into the eventual election next year to go for a rationalisation of the governance structures in regional New Zealand. My focus is on regional councils.
Particularly, he's unhappy about the Otago Regional Council, which he said is a Kremlin-like institution in the South Island.
No more suggestion that they turn into a back office for iwi. No more suggestion that the people running these councils, such as Otago and the South Island, can run some sort of Kremlin opportunity against the ambitions of our government to open up the mining sector, create jobs and generate economic resilience.
All because of, effectively, he doesn't like the decisions they're making. So that's slightly different from what Chris Bishop is saying. He doesn't like how complicated and the bureaucracy and the duplication that inevitably happens when you have multiple organisations operating in a similar sphere, but
whereas Shane Jones has just got a grudge.
Yeah, well, he wants some building to happen that they're not too keen on. Two similar kind of, I guess they want the same outcome, don't they? Just different reasons.
Well, I guess, and it gives National some political backup from a coalition partner.
Yeah, exactly. And the ACT Party as well, the politics of this is quite fascinating, is supporting this for a third reason, because in Canterbury, ECAN has seats for Ngaitahu. Ngaitahu representation is guaranteed on the ECAN board.
The people of Canterbury who live in the area and pay the rates get to vote for their representative. But then if you're part of Ngaitahu, then you also get to appoint a couple of councillors to sit beside them. And that is a version of tino rangatiratanga that is incompatible with liberal democracy.
Now, this change, getting rid of the board that runs ECAN and just replacing it with mayors, means that Ngaitahu representation is gone. So ACT is celebrating from the perspective of getting rid of co-governance. Three completely different, really, reasons for this policy.
If the proposal goes ahead, 11 regional councils would be axed. They will be replaced with new combined territories boards made up of mayors from the region's cities and district councils. Mayors will work together to govern the regions. The government says it will streamline decision-making, stripping out duplication, standardising processes and driving down the complexity and compliance costs.
Can we just skip back to the beginning for a moment and just run through what the announcement was actually about? What are the structural changes proposed and what is the timeline?
Yeah, I jumped over that a little bit because actually it is unclear. And what the government really did say was we want to hear from mayors, we want to hear from communities, we want to hear from New Zealanders about how they think their councils are operating and what could be changed. In the end, it will be region by region what the change actually looks like. But they've said it will need to change, that's for certain, and that change will take a very, very long time. Chris Bishop was quite open about the fact, really, that the change will not be completed by the 2026 election. But to get the momentum started, that is why they're saying that they want to replace the elected officials eventually with a board of mayors who will then transition to whatever new system is decided by councils and voters.
This is actual local government minister Simon Watts.
The current structure of local government is no longer fit for purpose. There's too many layers. It's creating confusion and it's eroding social licence. Our challenge also is around rates keep rising and Kiwis are getting frustrated. So that's why we're doing a reset. We're announcing our proposal to replace regional councillors entirely and force local authorities to develop plans to run their regions more efficiently and effectively.
Have we heard from the opposition as to what they might do should there be a change in government?
Yeah, the Labour Party came out, as you picked up earlier on, and said that the campaign promise of localism was not being adhered to here, and they said that this was a broken promise effectively from the government. Yes, they can make that point in opposition, but does it actually answer the question of do they support this? This is not dissimilar from a Labour Party policy. This is the same rationale of having three waters, is that you could combine resources across different cities and regions to make it more effective and cheaper to operate local government services. That is the same rationale that Chris Bishop is using for pushing forward this reform of regional councils. So there probably is room for bipartisan support here. Te Pāti Māori and the Greens were a bit more critical. Te Pāti Māori co-leader Debbie Ngāre-Wapeka said that this was a power grab, that it ties in with the recent fast-track changes which give power to ministers effectively to push through the paperwork and make it more quick to build stuff like mines or wind farms across New Zealand. They said that this reform tied into that because one of the proposals is to have Crown appointees on regional councils alongside those elected mayors or potentially in the future elected representatives. They see this as a power grab, a concerning move, and the Green Party has similar concerns.
It's not a power grab. This is about making local government fit for purpose and delivering value for ratepayers and ultimately for New Zealanders.
Talking to Wellington City councillors, and they're not massively in favour of this. There are concerns about how this will impact on mana whenua and the current relationships that Greater Wellington has with tangata whenua here. But they also say that they're getting a lot of the complaints that should be going to Greater Wellington's councillors because no one knows who Greater Wellington's councillors are or how to find them.
Yeah, I mean, although, you look on my local Facebook page and everyone's always calling out the local MP for what's clearly a council issue and vice versa.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, you just can't fight this general level of ignorance.
And you've got three people, at least three people across the different political systems who kind of all have the same job, don't they?
So we need stronger lines drawn, clearer responsibilities.
Yeah, and it's complicated about how that will work, but this is going to take years to change this. So I think this discussion will be going on for quite some time.
So what will happen functionally to regional councils once their councillors are usurped by the region's mayors?
The actual staff and the functions of that regional council will continue. It is only the elected regional councillors that will be out of a job.
So what happens? Do they all just sort of drive up to the central area where the regional council's headquartered, turf out the chair of the regional council and just sit down and start talking amongst themselves?
Yeah, that's exactly how I picture it. And that will be at earliest probably late next year, maybe after though. There needs to be legislation drafted to get this under way, and that hasn't happened yet.
To recap, as a temporary measure, the regional councillors will be replaced by the mayors on combined territories boards, and they have 2 years to work out what the decision-making structures will look like in the future.
And that could involve the regional council not existing. It could involve council-controlled organisations, say a public transport agency, a water agency, a parks agency, operating as kind of jointly owned businesses by the councils in that area. There's quite a few different ways to organise this. Or they could just say we quite like having the regional council sitting as it is, and we will continue to have mayors here and actually maybe elect some people as well.
If those mayors don't agree, and in some cases you'll have up to 5, if they don't agree amongst each other, surely they're going to end up in a worse position than before when just one regional council chair ruled the roost.
And then you also have the case of, if you have a big city and then smaller towns around that in the region, should that big city mayor get the say? Or should it be a kind of consensus? If you have Wellington City and then it's just the Wairarapa mayors who don't agree, well, Wellington's way bigger. Should they be able, because there's lots of different councils in Wairarapa, should they be able to block any change that the majority of the population appears to support? That is really complicated about how you structure this. The government has a preferred option where it wants some sort of measure to protect rural or provincial voices within those regions so they aren't completely drowned out. But ultimately, this is a government that campaigned on one person, one vote. They don't like co-governance. And so you kind of have to just say, well, the big city mayor is going to probably be able to steamroll in some of these cases if they have support and the regional voice or rural voices don't. Well, that's democracy.
Mayors are traditionally quite busy people. How are they going to fit all this into their schedules? Because it's going to take up a lot of their time, isn't it?
Yeah, really, really busy job. And they didn't sign up for this. So you signed up for a job and now, hey, we now kind of want you to be mayor of 2 organisations. This will be short term. I'm not sure how long this could be the case where they are having to do this work they didn't ask to do. But this suddenly being the mayor is a way bigger job than it used to be. Unless, of course, you're in Marlborough or Auckland, where nothing changes.
Simpler, more cost-effective local government was the headline on the Beehive's release on this. Can you see that being the end result?
I actually can. And I went to the Local Government New Zealand press conference. It held one right after Chris Bishop and Simon Watts announced this. And these guys work in regional and district councils. They had 2 mayors there. And they kind of just couldn't come up with a reason why this wouldn't work. Because at the end of the day, all the government's really announced is work to start a brainstorming session with regions, with mayors, with councillors, with voters who want to, get involved.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. This episode was engineered by Phil Benge and produced by Gwen McClure. Thanks to Stuff's Glenn McConnell. I'm Alexia Russell. Mā te wā.